Offer valid on standard browsers, U.S. only.
When I heard about Date My Age, I thought, really? But there I was in my empty, quiet house, my laptop on the kitchen counter, and I typed in my name. Looking for a man between the ages of 40 to 60? Sure, why not?
Date My Age is different. With verified profiles, you can feel safe and secure to explore meaningful connections with interesting and mature singles.
Date My Age made it really easy. I could join and view online profiles for free. All of a sudden, my empty house wasn't so quiet anymore. I got so much attention, it just made me feel seen and alive. Date My Age helped me start a totally new chapter in my life.
Find a friend, a lover, a partner at Date My Age. Get 60% off when you join at datemyage.com today. That's datemyage.com to connect with thousands of singles worldwide. datemyage.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 99 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibby Gibson. Gibbs, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, how you doing? I'm doing good.
How you doing? I'm doing good.
That's what I say.
How you doing?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. So,
Good.
What does 99 mean to you?
99 red balloons. Oh, wait. You want to know about the podcast?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, hey, Unsolved, 99 episodes, man.
Means we're one away from 100.
We are.
It's coming up next week, and it'll be here before you know it.
That's big news. What are we going to do?
We are going to do a multi-parter, the first one to come out a week from tonight, or a week from when this episode comes out,
Yeah.
on the West Memphis 3.
That's going to be good.
And I say the West Memphis 3, right? It's not an unsolved case technically,
Yeah.
but we're going to do it on Unsolved because, like we talked about on TCAT, I think most people think it is unsolved. They do not believe that those three boys, now men, committed the murders of those three little boys. I just don't believe most people think they did it.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's a good place for that episode, those episodes to call home is on Unsolved.
I think so too.
For the way we do things.
I think so too. So look forward to that part one next Sunday. All right. We made this announcement on TCAT. I'm going to make it on this podcast as well one time. We are starting to split up the Patreon shout outs in an effort to be more current so that people don't have to wait 5 weeks to hear their shout out after they pledge. So we're going to split them up from now on, half on TCAT, half on Unsolved. So this week we had Wendy Saketa.
Well, thanks, Wendy.
Jackie Holland.
Jackie Holland.
Barb Higgins.
Hey, Barb.
Jason Orzechowski.
Orzechowski.
Linda W.
Hey, thanks, Linda.
Christopher Austin.
Hey, Christopher.
Heather Hanselman jumped out at her highest
The
level.
Hanselman.
We had Julia Novak.
Novak, yes.
Pete Wright.
Hey, Pete.
Roxanne Jolette jumped out at her highest level.
Roxanne.
Roxanne!
There you go.
At Rendy Kern.
Hey, Rendy.
Dave Regan.
Hey, thank you, Dave.
Stacey Kittredge.
With Kittredge.
Melinda Brown.
Hey, Melinda.
Tish, not Trish.
Got to go Tish. Keep the other letters out.
Casey Klingon.
Yeah, she's clinging on.
Sarah Durbin.
The Durbin?
The guy.
Just the guy.
Just the guy.
When you're that good, that cool, you can just be the guy.
The guy. Brianna Kramer.
Hey, Brianna.
Yasmin Kerrigan.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Ashley Marie.
Hey, Ashley.
And Anna Johnson.
Anna.
Anna. Then we go back into the vault, Gibbs. This week we selected Caitlin Tull. Not only a very long-time supporter of the show, of both shows, but a really big supporter.
Yeah.
Just a major supporter of what we do, and we can't be more thankful.
Love it.
We had a lot of PayPal support as well. Kira Enright, Amanda McMullen,
Thank you.
Asa Boge,
Asa.
Jennifer Mosier,
Thank you, Jennifer.
Michelle Mesmer,
Awesome.
and our friend Ted Perry.
Hey, Ted.
We like Ted. He's a cool
Ted's
guy.
a good guy.
All right, right now on True Crime All the Time, there is an episode out, if you haven't heard it yet, on Darren Dion Van, a lesser known serial killer.
Yeah.
Not as notorious as some, but we know that listeners like some of those, and we try to sprinkle those in. This is a bad guy.
He's a bad guy and could have done some pretty high numbers. Not sure exactly the total, but you can speculate that there could be fairly high.
Yeah, so he admitted to murdering at least 7 women, and these murders took place in a fairly short period of time.
They did.
Long enough for him to be considered a serial killer, but he hinted to police that his murders could go back as far as 20 years. So if that's true, which I don't think they've proven yet, and this case is a little more recent than some that we've done.
Absolutely.
His number could be much, much higher.
Yeah.
It really
my
could.
mathematical skills, we know it can be.
All right, Gibbs, you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
So we are talking about the mysterious death of Jennifer Harris. This was a listener suggestion, came in a voicemail a week or two ago.
It did, yeah.
Very recently.
Very recent.
I wish I knew who it was. I'd give him a shout out, but
Well, you know who you are, and this is your shout out.
I can never remember. So it was May 12th, 2002, in the town of Bonham, Texas,
Small little town.
that 28-year-old Jennifer Harris went missing. So a couple of things that police know. They know that on Mother's Day, she was visiting her friend Christy Farr around 8 p.m., but apparently she had to leave rather quickly. And she didn't tell Christy where she was going. The next day, her Jeep was found abandoned on the side of the road at a local spot where people often stopped. There's kind of a pull off, I think.
Yeah.
It was said that people would hang out. I don't know if it was a lover's lane, Gibbs. It talked about people stopping, listening to music, maybe doing some other things, but who knows?
Yeah, it's a local hangout.
The other thing that police learned during the investigation after Jennifer's disappearance was that she told a friend that she was pregnant. The police interviewed Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, it's a man by the name of James Hamilton, as well as her ex-husband, Rob Holman. And they both said essentially the same thing. Neither one of these men saw Jennifer the night that she went missing, and they both said they were not involved in any way in her disappearance.
Yeah, said, we don't know what's going on. We don't. And to the point that during a police interview, Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, James Hamilton, he said, I was with a friend more than an hour away at a McDonald's around the time the investigators believed that Jennifer disappeared. And he actually took a lie detector test, and he passed.
So that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, he's got an alibi, and he passes, like a polygraph, I think.
We know, just come out and say it. You faked a number of them. We know.
You can get through a polygraph test. It's all in your control.
Well, I think there's a reason, right? There's a reason that polygraphs are not the end all be all. They're not what people used to think they were.
Yeah.
They don't carry the same weight in court or in trials that maybe they did back in the day. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before. I think there's only one state that actually recognizes the polygraph.
Maybe. Did we talk? I know it's very few, if hardly any at all.
We should get a polygraph machine and expert to come in, hook me up at CrimeCon.
And let people just pepper you with questions?
Yes.
That would be pretty good, actually.
Yeah. Except you'd bring in somebody like, holy, I didn't know you were going to bring that person in. Like, now I'm really, bring my mom in.
Oh, I was going to bring in like Mark Garrigus or some big fancy attorney and just have him pepper you.
Just drill. Yeah.
So the ex-boyfriend interview goes pretty well. The police interview with the ex-husband was a little bit different. Rob Holman had an alibi for police, but he didn't have anyone that could verify it, right? Of what he was doing the night that Jennifer went missing. So what he said was that he went out that night, got some beer, went to a friend's house to visit.
Well, then he says, hey, my friends weren't home. So I went ahead and just kind of cruised around the county for the next 5 hours.
Yeah, just hit the backcountry roads.
For 5 hours.
You know, I used to like to cruise, but 5 hours is
It's a lot of cruising the backcountry roads in your county.
At night.
It's a lot of thinking.
It is. But that's what he said. He drove around for about 5 hours. So police asked him during this interview, while you were driving around, did you see her? He said he didn't, but added that he did see a Jeep that could have possibly been Jennifer's. So they pressed him on this a little bit, as they would, right, when this type of information is brought up. And they said, so are you saying that you think it could have been her Jeep, or are you saying that you saw her Jeep?
Yeah, he would eventually say, yes, I seen it. It was on Route 889 at a stop sign. He said, she was in front of me and she was headed out of town. And then she drove off, and that was the last time I saw her. I didn't follow her. But yeah, it was her in her Jeep. So he went from, I didn't see her.
Never saw her at all.
Never saw her to, yeah, I eventually did see her in her Jeep, just quickly at a stop sign, and she went on her way.
And I think it's important, right? And that's why we made a big deal out of it. The ex-boyfriend's police interview kind of went the way that you would expect for somebody that's got an alibi, can be checked out, especially takes a lie detector test, passes, no worries. But the ex-husbands didn't go like that. Mm-hmm. It was fuzzy, to say the least. And anytime you start backpedaling and changing answers, gives especially very crucial answers, such as, did you see the victim that night? That's going to raise a lot of suspicion.
Sure. But, her dad's worried, where's my daughter at? And, he was a ex-Marine. And so he decided he was going to try to figure this out. He went out every day, every night, constantly looking for her, only sleeping 2 or 3 hours a day. And he even said in one interview that he would actually start looking for buzzards up in the sky just because maybe they would lead him to her body if that's what needed to be done. He just wanted to find his daughter. And that'd be tough, to have your kid missing and you're out, 21, 22 hours a day, just nonstop canvassing the area for any hope.
Yeah. I mean, inconceivable to me. I get you have to sleep at some point.
Yeah.
You get so tired you can't go, but it sounds like, he's taking what are essentially almost like cat naps every single day, and then getting right back up and looking for his daughter.
And those naps probably aren't doing anything because you're not relaxed.
No.
You're just probably because you're forced to fall asleep for a little bit.
So let's talk about Jennifer a little bit. We said she was 28 years old. She had beautiful red hair, brown eyes. Her friends and family described her as a goofball.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Silly.
Yeah, in a good way, goofball.
I think one of them used the reference like Lucille Ball.
Yeah. Adorable, lovable. She was athletic. She was a very popular cheerleader in high school.
She was a big tennis player, too. She loved to play tennis.
Her sister came out and said that Jennifer was a dreamer. I think, Gibbs, she thought a lot about, what was out there beyond the small town that she lived in.
Sure.
And at some point she wanted to see what it was, and she wanted to experience the world.
Probably aspired to be something more than what she could be if she just stayed there.
Her family said that, really at the age of 28 years old, she was just starting to come into her own. And she was starting to find out who she really was.
It takes people some time. I'm still trying to figure out who I am.
I'm trying to figure out who you are too.
Yeah, I don't really know. I've got all these different IDs,
You're like Jason Bourne in the,
Yes.
He opens up that box and there's just tons of passports. They all have different names.
Like, who am I?
He doesn't know which one's his real name.
No. I do remember being on a boat at one point and jumping off.
Into the water.
Sharp pain in my back. I don't know.
So Jennifer's missing. Her dad's out searching for her.
Yeah.
Her family's worried sick about her. Her friends.
Oh, they're devastated.
Everyone. Yeah, they're devastated. Unfortunately, it's just 6 days later, after Jennifer disappeared, that a fisherman found her nude body floating in the Red River. And obviously, Gibbs, the family, is devastated to get this kind of news, right? They were holding out hope that they would find Jennifer. Now they find out that she's dead. But it didn't just devastate the family and her friends. This devastated this whole small town, this community. Jennifer's younger sister would later talk about being there that day when Jennifer was found in the Red River by a bridge. She remembers seeing her dad talking with police officers about what they found. And, Gibbs, that had to be extremely tough to be on site when they found your older sister's naked, lifeless body. And then add on top of that, seeing your dad.
Well, he had to be devastated. We know he was devastated. And this is a tough retired Marine, But you know what? This was one of his babies, man. Devastated him.
And like you said, he had been searching for her nonstop. He was operating on very little sleep. But this is something that, even years later, her younger sister remembers. Her dad reacting to Jennifer being found. Because my take is, and I'm speculating here, she probably had not seen him be that emotional maybe a lot of times.
Yeah, probably not.
This is probably, like you said, a big bad Marine. He was probably pretty stoic.
Yeah.
But when you discover that your daughter's been found dead, you're going to lose it.
Yeah, it's rough.
But now the police have a body. But this is Texas in the summer, the start of the summer, getting ready to get into summer, right? It's May. It's hot in Texas. Jennifer's body was very badly decomposed already within 6 days. So much so that the medical examiner couldn't determine her cause of death. But even though they couldn't definitively determine cause of death, I think they still, I guess unofficially, Gibbs, right, were calling this a violent homicide. One thing that they noted was that Jennifer's body had an infected wound, and they thought this was made as a result of her uterus being removed. The police also found Jennifer's laptop and what they believed were some of her clothes, her shirt, her jeans, her bra. Now, obviously, the ex-boyfriend and the ex-husband were questioned again, and now they're denying any involvement in Jennifer's murder. Right? Before it was a disappearance, now it's a murder. There was something odd found on Jennifer's body, and it was this blue mud. And so they started looking into this blue mud. They talked to some local fishermen, and they were told that there's really only two places on the Red River where you would find this, what they call blue marl mud. One spot was on the riverbank, up a little ways from where Jennifer's body was found. The other spot was much further away on the river from where Jennifer's body was found. So the police kind of discounted that spot. They focused in on the other spot that was closer. The other reason for that was that in that first spot, the one that was closer, there was a cottage.
Yeah, caretaker's cottage that strangely the night she went missing was burned to the ground. Yeah, and this cottage was only like 30 yards up from the riverbank.
So again, I think that's why police focused in on this spot where the blue mud was found as opposed to the one much further away. The investigators developed a theory about that night that Jennifer disappeared, and it was that she left her best friend Christy Farr's house and met her killer at that caretaker's cottage. Someone killed her in the cottage or on the riverbank and then burned down the cottage to hide evidence. And you have to think about this a little bit, Gibbs. This wasn't a cottage that was built 5-10 years prior.
Right.
This was a cottage that had been there for a very long time. And then all of a sudden, it just happens to burn down the same night that Jennifer disappears.
It would be a strange coincidence.
And it would be a strange coincidence as well.
Both of those would apply, yes.
Investigators eventually excavated around the cottage site, the foundation.
Yeah, they went like 15 feet around the foundation of the property. They also found a well on the site. They dug down a few feet on that, and but they couldn't find anything.
No clues.
No clues.
Nothing to help them to further the investigation. But we talked about Jennifer's ex-husband, Rob. And, he was a person of interest. No doubt police talked to him, but his name just kept surfacing.
Yeah, again and again in different conversations when they would interview people, his name would pop up.
Rob and Jennifer were together for a long time. They started dating when Jennifer was in the 6th grade.
Yeah, he was in the 5th.
He was in the 5th grade.
Kind of like you, dating an older woman.
Always.
Yeah.
But they were inseparable. They dated all the way through high school.
Well, you know how that is. When you spend that much time growing up as little kids together, end up being boyfriend, girlfriend, you're kind of like part of the family.
And I think Jennifer's family thought of Rob that way. After high school, Jennifer went to college about 3 hours away. And eventually after high school, Rob followed Jennifer to the same college. They married in 1996, but just a year later, Jennifer was dealt a crushing blow. Her mom passed away from cancer. And that's the kind of thing that, really makes a young person grow up in a hurry.
Yeah, and her younger sister said, she saw Jennifer just really mature, really make some decisions about her life after that were some tough decisions, but she grew up really fast during that time.
In 1999, the pair bought a house together in Dallas, but tension started to develop in the relationship.
Yeah, Jennifer loved being in the big city. She loved the culture, the atmosphere, everything about the big city. But Rob hated it. He was a country boy. He wanted to be back in the small town. And, they fought about that.
Rob worked as a landscaper. Jennifer took massage therapy classes.
Hey, you did that once.
My brother hung me on a hook once. Once.
Yeah.
All right, Gibbs, let's talk about our sponsor, The Real Real, the leading reseller of authenticated luxury from top designers. You can shop designers like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Rolex, Cartier, and hundreds more at up to 90% off retail. New arrivals come in daily, and every single item is authenticated by The Real Real's team of experts. You can shop and consign women's and men's luxury fashion, as well as fine jewelry, watches, art, and home. New customers receive an automatic $25 off at checkout. It gives know I'm a watch guy. I've been on their website looking at some Omegas, some Tag Heuers, the type of watches that I've always wanted to own, but could really never afford to buy. And the prices are amazing. So shop in-store, online, or download the app and get 20% off select items with the promo code REAL. That's therealreal.com, REALREAL, promo code REAL for 20% off select items. All this tension, right? We talked about it. These things are brewing in the relationship. And eventually Jennifer began seeing someone else, right? She met someone that had similar interests as she did. And also, I think, Gibbs, from the research, it appeared that this was someone that was giving her the attention that Rob was not. And oftentimes you see that in a relationship when one person chooses to go outside the marriage. Seems that's what happened here.
Yeah.
And this was James Hamilton, the man that we talked about, who was interviewed, at the time that Jennifer disappeared. He was her ex-boyfriend. He wanted to start a wellness center with Jennifer, and their relationship blossomed. They started to see each other more and more. But James Hamilton was a pretty complicated guy as well.
Well, he was still living with his girlfriend, which happens to be the mother of his child. And on top of that, she was expecting their second child.
That's complicated.
That's very complicated.
Now, at a certain point, Rob finds out about Jennifer's relationship with James, and he was livid.
He was so upset he punched 5 holes in the wall of their house. Not 1, but 5.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4.
It was a combo punch.
But 5.
Yeah.
But, let's face it, Gibbs, who wouldn't be upset? Very understandable.
Sure.
Jennifer's dad and sister would later talk about this incident. And they talked about the holes in the walls. They said they were huge, size of softballs. But her sister has also talked about something else that happened that night. She said her sister called her that night and she was very upset. She said that Rob came home, he was drunk, and he forced himself on her and attacked her. But Jennifer never reported this to police. So we're talking about this past, right, of Jennifer, Rob, James. But let's flash forward back to after Jennifer's body is discovered during one of Rob's interviews with police. And he had a different story about who was violent in their relationship. He said it was Jennifer. He said she had a very hot temper. He told police that she would get mad and, try to come at him. And all he could do was grab her and hold her until she calmed down. It's almost like she was in a rage. Yeah. This is his story to police.
Sure.
So now we go back in time. The relationship between Rob and Jennifer, it's soured.
Yeah, it's falling apart.
And it gets to the point where Rob moves out, moves back to Bonham, and James Hamilton, the boyfriend, moves in with Jennifer.
Yeah. And basically at that point, James and Jennifer become partners in a massage therapy business together. This is something that she really wanted to do. This is something that she believed in. She obtained a loan for the business, and then she also took care of all the finances.
All right, Gibbs. So James and Jennifer living together in the suburbs of Dallas. They're also partners in a massage therapy business. Rob is back in Bonham.
Yeah, but she's not all warm and fuzzy about this relationship with James now.
I think it turns out not to be exactly what she thought it was going to be.
And I think he was more into her than she was into him, to the point he even asked her to marry her, and she shot him down. She said no, and he didn't take this very well.
No, apparently he got very upset about Jennifer turning down his proposal, and the relationship became a constant fight between the two of them. By this point, Jennifer and Rob had divorced, but she wasn't happy with James. She'd had enough of him. She's not really in a great place right, at this point in time. And it became even worse because Jennifer had to file bankruptcy. The massage business failed. It wasn't doing well. They had all of their hopes. They had sunk a lot of money into this thing. She was forced to file bankruptcy.
Yeah, so her life is in a pretty bad space at that point. I mean, no income, no relationship. Things aren't looking too good for her. She's not feeling good about her life.
So Jennifer decided to reach out to the one person that had pretty much been consistent in her life since, what did we say, fifth grade?
Fifth, sixth grade, yeah.
And that was Rob. But Rob had already moved on. He had a girlfriend.
But some of her family would say that Jennifer wanted Rob back anyway, and she was going to try to get him back. And even Rob would confirm that they started being intimate during this time period.
Even though he had a girlfriend. Jennifer made the decision to move back to Bonham. And this was just 6 weeks before she disappeared. She made that decision for a couple of reasons, I believe, Gibbs. Number one, to be back close to her family, but number two, to be close to Rob. One thing that Rob told investigators was that on the day Jennifer went missing, she called him to see if they could meet up. But he told investigators that he said no, he couldn't make it work. He had plans with his girlfriend. But he added that when he told her no, Jennifer got extremely upset.
Now, at the same time, the investigators would ask him a few more questions, and Rob would say, hey, if you want me to take a polygraph, I'll take a polygraph right now. But the investigators didn't ask him to, and so the investigators just wrapped up the interview and allowed him to go home.
So during the investigation, at some point, police interviewed one of Jennifer's friends, a woman named Jill. And Jill told investigators that she had a conversation with Jennifer, and Jennifer told her that she was in a hot mess, as she described it. She said she was pregnant. And Jill said that Jennifer went on to tell her that she thought it was Rob's.
So at the beginning of the episode, we mentioned that she told somebody that she could be pregnant. And this is going to end up being a big part of this case because there's going to be some theories thrown around about this.
Around the pregnancy and whose baby it could be.
Exactly.
So police find this information out, Gibbs, but what do they have? Right? It's hearsay. It's Jennifer's friend saying that Jennifer told her this. That's what they have. But based on that, I think they start to theorize that someone knew she was pregnant, quite possibly the dad, and maybe that's the person that killed her and also took that extra step that we mentioned, cutting out her uterus to destroy any evidence of the fact that she was pregnant.
And this information was out in the media. Somehow it got leaked into the media. So, in this small town, the coffee shop, the barber shop, the local diner, that had to be big news. People were buzzing about it. People were coming up with their own theories behind.
Oh, I'm sure.
Who it was, what happened, and all that.
The beauty parlor, the auto shop.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to think of some more shops. Because you were
like Mayberry.
You were on a shop roll there.
I was on a shop, yeah.
But this whole thing would have been huge news in this small town. But this is kind of the bombshell. So you have all these people talking about it, right? Who's the dad? Could it be Rob? The problem was that police had no evidence that she was pregnant. They only had the friend telling them that she said she was pregnant.
So, they're going to call Rob in and interview him again. And they're going to tell him what they discovered with this conversation with her friend. And Rob did say that he did meet her about a month before her disappearance at a local spot near the drive-in theater. At that point, she told Rob she was pregnant and it was his baby. At that point, Rob was shocked and didn't really have much to say.
Well, if you have a girlfriend and your ex-wife who you've been messing around with comes to tell you that she's pregnant, that would be jarring, I would think.
Yeah.
I can't speak from personal experience because I've never been in that situation.
And I guess, they didn't have any proof, though, right? There's no proof. no one could ever find any proof. So maybe she took one of those EPT, is that what they're called? Pregnancy tests, at-home pregnancy test.
Yeah, that's just a brand name, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, maybe that's how she figured she was pregnant. But there was no medical records with a doctor where she went and did any blood test.
That's why the police had no concrete evidence.
Right.
But now you have a second person saying that they were told by Jennifer that she was pregnant.
Yes.
So now it's 2010. And on the 8-year anniversary of the day that Jennifer Harris was found, an investigator by the name of Daryl Parker, he went to visit Rob. This is 8 years later. So Parker had been going through Jennifer's case file, and he found some pictures of Rob and Jennifer. So he decided to take them to Rob, show them to Rob, maybe Gibbs, just to see what happened.
Yeah.
Now, what Parker says is that when he gave the photos to Rob, the very first photo on the top of the stack was a picture of Jennifer swimming in a muddy water hole. Parker said that Rob was shocked, or seemed like he was in shock when he saw this picture.
Yeah, he would stare at it for quite a while, too, not saying anything, just looking at the picture.
So investigator Parker left Rob, but as he did, he said, you know what? If you want to talk about anything, just call me. I think he had, I don't know if you want to call it a gut feeling, that after seeing Rob's reaction to this photo,
Sure.
maybe Rob did have something he wanted to talk about.
You know what? And his gut instinct was right, because a couple hours passed and Rob did call him and said, hey, can we meet up and talk?
And Parker says, sure, let's meet tomorrow.
Parker would say later that he had wished that he drove right over right then. Why, I mean, the guy's, it's hot right now, right? The guy wants to talk. I think he wishes that he would have had done that.
Instead of waiting a day.
Exactly.
Because what happens is Rob does show up the next day, but he wasn't alone. He brought his attorney with him. So they're talking, and Parker asked him point blank, did you have anything to do with Jennifer's death? Rob said no. Parker then asked him, did you believe she was pregnant? And Rob said no, he didn't. Then he asked Rob, do you think Jennifer thought she was pregnant? And again, Rob said no. And Gibbs, you mentioned it, but I think this is why investigator Daryl Parker was so frustrated about what happened, right? He had this sense that Rob was about ready to tell him something, wanted to tell him something. And then you get to the next day and maybe it's like everything's changed. He's talked to his attorney. He brought his attorney and he basically said no to every question.
Yeah.
So in the end, nothing comes out of it, even though the day before it seemed, at least to the investigator, as if he was about ready to learn something about what happened to Jennifer Harris. So again, police have no evidence. They can't really even prove whether or not Jennifer was pregnant. They just don't really have much to go on, and it's even 8 years later, nothing has broken loose. We talked about the fact that at the time, after Jennifer was found, the coroner believed that the killer removed her uterus. But later on, a forensic specialist from Dallas stated that in his professional opinion, her uterus was not cut out. He believed that it had been destroyed by turtles, fish, wildlife, while her body was in the Red River. But even though he came out and said this, none of that stopped the rumor mill. I think another person to talk about Gibbs in this case is a guy by the name of Miles Porter. And Porter's interesting because he was the district attorney at the time Jennifer Harris was murdered. And at a certain point after she's found, he kind of gets caught up in this case. Now, Miles said he never knew Jennifer Harris. He certainly didn't kill Jennifer Harris. what he has said all along is that the only reason his name came up at all associated with this case was because there were some people in town that didn't like him. There were some people that were upset with him over how he handled another case, totally unrelated to the case of Jennifer Harris. They didn't like how that case panned out. And so the rumor mill started up, according to him, that he had something to do with her murder. And if that's the case, Gibbs, it's actually kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because, he goes on to say that these false accusations ended up costing him his job. He lost his reelection.
Based off the gossip.
That he was somehow involved in this murder.
I mean, it's a small town, small county.
Sure.
It doesn't take much to probably ruin you politically wise.
So once he lost the reelection, he moved into private practice. But over the years, he's talked about it. He has had to live with the fallout from what he calls these unfounded allegations. And by all accounts, Gibbs, they are. I mean, there is not a shred of evidence, not really even, there's nothing from the police saying anything about him being involved. But time passes in this case and it gets cold, but it doesn't mean that investigators stopped working it. They actually go back, combing through the files, and they decide that they want to talk to a woman named Rhonda Fitzwater. And Rhonda was the one that actually found Jennifer's Jeep along the side of the road. They talked to her early on in the investigation, but they decide they want to talk to her again. Just ask her some questions.
Sure.
But she really doesn't know anything. I mean, she found the Jeep. She called it in. She thought it was strange. That's why she called it in. But she tells investigators, I didn't see anyone in the Jeep. I didn't see anyone even around the Jeep.
Yeah, I think they were just hoping that maybe she saw more than she did.
Yeah, maybe she would remember something, or maybe she knew something that she didn't tell them back then, but she didn't.
Because they have no physical evidence, they're just trying to tie anything together. And I think they just wanted to say, what I really think, did you see one of the ex driving behind her? I think that's what they wanted to hear.
Then in 2017, some new investigators come onto the case, right? And they start to look through the files, look through the evidence.
Like a cold case team.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one thing they discover, Gibbs, is that the clothing that was believed to have been Jennifer's and Jennifer's laptop, all of which was booked into evidence, is gone.
Yeah, they can't find it. It's missing.
Mysteriously. That does tend to happen a lot in some of these cold cases that we talk about. I really don't know how, but it does tend to happen.
I don't get it either.
They also found out that some evidence that they did have had been damaged. Some of it had been destroyed by water that had somehow, gotten into the storage area. Apparently, some of the files were so wet that they couldn't even make out the handwriting anymore.
Just makes you wonder when they store these things. Why aren't they storing them off the ground, covered in plastic or something? I don't know. I mean, I just don't get it. If it's critical evidence, you would think you would do. I know a lot of these small towns, counties don't have the budget. But
some of them just use regular storage looking units. I've seen documentaries where they went to what looked to me to be a regular storage thing that was padlocked like anybody else would use.
Yeah, anybody can, not really high security.
No.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's going to differ greatly from area to area. If you've got a big city, they may have
climate control.
Yeah, they've got funds maybe to do things a little differently. But these same investigators, they went out to the site of that caretaker's cottage that we talked about.
And they went out to that site. And the question that they ask is, why would somebody burn down this place on the day that she went missing? Why would they do that? Why would they want to cause any type of attention to themselves at that time? And that's a valid point. Why would you?
I think it can be a valid point unless the killer murdered her in that cottage. Because I think that's kind of what we were alluding to
Yeah. And I think that's
front.
valid too, right? I mean,
That would be a reason to burn it down to get rid of any evidence. But if she wasn't murdered in the cottage, then I agree.
And I think they were concerned that too many people were focusing on the cottage and
Because of the mud,
and the
very specific mud.
And they talked to other people that said, there is other spots that you can get that blue mud, not just here in that other location that the fisherman told you. But then again, that one spot where the caretaker's home was the closest spot to where her body was found.
It was. But I think it's a question you have to ask. Did authorities, investigators early on in this case just put way too much weight on that one spot solely based on the proximity to where it was in relation to where her body was found?
Right.
Also, it sounds like they got some bad information from those fishermen.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So without physical evidence, I mean, they're going to look at motive. And they're going to say Rob had some motive, right? If she was pregnant and he wants to avoid paying child support for the next 18 years, maybe that's motive. The other issue that they have is that her ex-boyfriend, he had an alibi, but the previous investigators never verified the alibi. They just assumed that what he said was the truth. They never investigated what he said he was doing, and they never talked to the people he said he was with.
Now, is that because he passed a lie detector test?
Probably so.
And they put more validity into the test than what we now know today, really should be given to that type of test.
Yeah. And, the new investigators would question, why wouldn't you? It's like investigation 101, I think, verify the alibi.
But isn't that the problem we often have in these unsolved cases? So we're what, Gibbs, 16, 17 years, almost 17 years later after the murder of Jennifer Harris. When you look back at a lot of these cases at the early investigation, and I hate to harp on the cops and the investigators, but you usually find out that something wasn't done maybe quite the way you wish it would have been, whether it's focusing on one thing to the exclusion of a bunch of other things, or one person to the exclusion of other people. I think that happens a lot.
These new investigators also question, why didn't the previous investigation team have more conversations with her ex-boyfriend? Because he called Jennifer's dad 2 months after her passing to ask her about her life insurance policy that she took out when they opened up the massage place together. Again, money is motive, right? If there was money to be had and he was named as a benefactor, maybe there's reasons there. But again, no one questioned him at the time about that.
Well, he also loved her. We talked about that. He wanted to marry her. So when you say money is motive, it often is. But love is too.
Oh, absolutely. Jealousy.
And you have love and money together.
Yeah.
He is somebody that should have been checked out, I think, much more thoroughly.
Well, I agree.
I don't know for a fact. I get the feeling that once he passed that lie detector test, that was it. Police thought, okay, he couldn't have had anything.
Checked him off the list and said, let's move on.
And I'm not saying he did. I have no idea. But from the research, it doesn't appear that a lot of the things that you think investigators would take a look at regarding a person of interest just doesn't seem like they did that with him.
Yeah. So these new investigators looked into some other potential witnesses at the time and reviewed their file. And they were actually surprised that there was not more investigation into what they had to say as well.
So these were people that had information early on. They just didn't get a lot of attention from police.
And one of them was, there was a witness. Her name was Deborah Lambert. And she heard about Jennifer's case on a local unsolved broadcast. And she called investigators to tell them that when she was driving over the Red River Bridge on Mother's Day that very evening, she saw 3 men and 1 woman. And that woman had red hair. The guys had her by her elbows as if they were trying to keep her from getting away. Deborah said as she drove over the bridge, she made eye contact with this woman. And she knew that this woman was scared and terrified. Deborah said that her mom was sitting next to her, and her mom even mentioned that this girl looks like she's fixing to get raped and killed.
That was her mom's, like, quote.
Quote, exactly. But they didn't call the police that day because they were too afraid to get involved. So it wasn't long after she saw what happened up on the bridge that she called the police. And they came out and talked to her. But they really weren't too convinced about her time frame because she said that she saw Jennifer at 5 p.m. But Jennifer's friend on that night said that she was with Jennifer until 8 p.m. when Jennifer got that call and left abruptly. So, look, I think people can get their timing off, right? People don't look at their watch every minute, So maybe Jennifer left earlier than 8 o'clock. Maybe this lady saw Jennifer by the bridge later than 5 o'clock, right? Who knows? Maybe they both have their timings off.
I think it's possible that people can get their times off. It's also possible, you have to put it out there, that this woman saw somebody else that wasn't Jennifer Harris. It's
Sure.
a possibility as well.
Could have been. But they interviewed her a year and a half later, and her story is consistent. She's still saying everything exactly how she said it the first time. And she's saying, this is Jennifer.
But they don't just re-interview this woman. They actually showed her a photo lineup, and she picked Rob out of the photo lineup as one of the men that she saw that day with Jennifer Harris. But Gibbs, this interview happened 12, 13, 14 years before the new investigators got involved. So they're looking at this information from the past, but they really can't corroborate it. For one thing, the photos that were used in this photo lineup are not in the file. There's not even any notes in the file documenting how the photo lineup was done, how it all went. It's just not there.
So they're not going to be able to use this information because without having the official lineup, it's not valid. And I don't even know how much that matters because sadly, both Deborah and her mother have passed away since then.
James and Rob, they won't talk about this case on advice of their counsel. And really at this point, it's pretty cold. The Texas Rangers aren't really doing much with it. The local sheriff is still looking into any leads that his department gets. And there is a private investigator that works the case that's been hired by Jennifer's family, but it's tough. Gibbs, right? We talk about this on Unsolved. Every year that goes by, you just mentioned it, 2 potential witnesses have died.
Yeah.
That makes solving a case very tough. It's not impossible. We've seen a lot of cases solved by, some new DNA techniques. You never want to give up hope.
But with no physical evidence, it makes it difficult.
See, that's the problem. Those cases that were solved, they had physical evidence. They had some type of DNA to compare to something. If you don't have that, very difficult.
Yeah. And the information they do have, it's not a lot. Most of it was destroyed. It just makes it tough. And it's, you're 17 years into this and you just wonder, will they? I mean, you want to keep hope alive for sure for the family, but I think it's one of the more tougher ones.
At this point, I think what you're left with, and we have some cases like this, is somebody that knows what happened.
Yeah.
Decides all of a sudden that now is the time to end their silence.
Yeah, they need to get it off their chest,
And whether that happens directly to police or they confide in someone else who then goes to police.
Right.
That's probably the only way that the truth ever really comes out in this case.
Hopefully that happens. Hopefully someone says, you know what, I've been living with this burden way too long. I need to get it off my chest. And they go to the police or go to the family and say that this is what happened.
I agree. But that's it. That is the case of the murder of Jennifer Harris. Gibbs, we got some voicemails.
Yeah, let's listen to them.
All right.
Hello, guys. This is Dixie. I just finished listening to the Joel Kirkpatrick case, and something you said, and I totally agree with, is that the public defenders oftentimes can't do what the others do. A lot of times it's because they have such an enormous caseload. But I will tell you that back several years ago, when I was representing mental health patients in court, the very best attorney I ever worked with was a public defender. He was the head of our public defender office. Now, right after that case, he moved to Texas. And I told him, I said, if I ever get in trouble, you're going to have to come back and defend me. But also, I think it's very interesting because, as you know, if you may not know because you've got so many calls, but I had contacted you about a case here in our town, Bowling Green, where a little 7-year-old girl was abducted and kidnapped. And I called the Texas Rangers about the Tommy Lynn cells, and they were right on top of it. They called me back the next day and said, that sounds like a viable case, except the fact that he was in prison during that time. In fact, he got out of prison a month after the little girl was kidnapped. But anyway, I'm sorry to keep on talking, but I just love listening to your podcast. You are outstanding. Thank you. Keep your own time ticking. Bye-bye.
Man, we just love Dixie.
We do. We love when Dixie calls in. Look at her. She's out there trying to solve a case.
Yes. I just want to go have a meal with her.
Let's do that.
I do. I'm serious.
She's not that far away.
Bowling Green?
She'll meet us at a Denny's somewhere.
Hey, wherever she wants.
All right.
Our treat.
Gibbs is buying.
Hi, guys. This is Joanne in Northern Kentucky, and I just recently discovered your podcast, and I just wanted to say I really enjoy the humor, the banter, the bad accents, and the relatable sincerity that you tell these stories with. I know it means a lot to the families of those still missing and unsolved. And I wanted to tell you of a case I know about here in Northern Kentucky. You might have heard it being just up in Dayton. A teenager named Paige Johnson disappeared in September of 2018. It's been over 2010. It's been over 8 years now, and her mother is still tortured every day with no answers. And the other thing I wanted to let you know was there is a Days at the Flying J at exit 171 in Walton off of 7175 South. Please check that one out. It's pretty good, even though, yes, you're right, it is expensive. Anyway, thanks for what you guys are doing. Keep up the good work, and we'll all keep on listening and keep your own time ticking. Thanks.
I don't know what she means by the bad accents. I don't understand what to say. What's that to mean?
So I promise I'm not screening calls only from Kentucky.
Sounds like you are.
It just happened that way. But what about that? She's telling us where we can find a Denny's.
Yeah.
So let's just all meet up there.
So we'll meet you there. You swing by, get Dixie for us, and we'll have a T-Cat breakfast fest.
Moon's over my hammy.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Michelle. I have been a listener for a while, and I just want to let you know I love your show. You guys are so funny, but not disrespectful at all, which got me thinking, are you guys planning to do perhaps a mystery podcast in the future? Because with Thinking Sideways not putting out new episodes anymore, there's a huge hole in my life. So I think it would be great if you guys could fill that hole, because I think you would just be perfect. Anyhow, just thought I'd let you know my thoughts. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work. Bye.
Well, Michelle, that's all I've got. I just wanted to say, well, Michelle.
Oh, okay. So, Gibbs, I actually didn't know that Thinking Sideways had stopped. When I heard the voicemail, I looked it up.
Yeah.
And I think they stopped last year. That is a podcast that I used to listen to. They were around before us.
Yeah.
And
that's when you had time to listen?
Yeah, when I had time to listen. They did some true crime. They did a lot of unexplained, phenomenon, and
you just want me to say phenomenon.
Strange things. So the problem is we're true crime all the time unsolved.
Yeah.
So we've tried to keep it with it has to be some type of true crime. Right. It's not to say that we couldn't do like a unexplained episode about something.
Maybe I'll do it on my new podcast, Good Night Gibby.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be checking that out.
Check that out.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. This is Carrie. I'm from Canal Fulton, Ohio. My dad was actually a homicide detective growing up, so I am so into your True Crime All the Time podcast. I have binged all the true crimes, and now I'm binging Unsolved and almost done, so going straight to criminology from there. I have a couple of cases that you guys haven't covered yet in Ohio. There's Rachel Johnson, which was actually a case my dad worked on, and she was a young mother that was burnt in the street. Very scary, very freaky, definitely needs to be solved. And Eliza Sherman, another mother that was actually gunned down in the streets of Cleveland. Both would be excellent cases for the future. And I just got to say, I can't pick one. I love you both. I love the podcast. Keep up the good work. And thank you so much for doing this. Keep your own time ticking.
All right. We love you too.
Yeah.
So 2 calls from Kentucky and 1 from Ohio.
We're staying in the tri-state area.
Exactly. All right. We appreciate that. We appreciate the kudos from everybody. We always do. It makes us feel good, Gibbs. But we love the case suggestions too. We've actually been taking a lot of our episodes from...
This one right here was one.
Yeah, from case suggestions. So... All right, that's it. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking. TCAT listeners, don't forget, you can own iconic luxury items at unreal values with The Real Real, the leading reseller of authenticated luxury from top designers at up to 90% off retail. New customers receive $25 off at checkout. Go to therealreal.com and use the promo code REAL.